Key number 3 of the 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business. Again, those things that I just went through are simply the foundation to the minor adjustments business. That's the foundation that I stand on. That's the foundation that I will never leave off of. That's the foundation. You must have a foundation. That's your foundation. Next, we're going to have key number 3 to the 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business. Now, you must be willing to surrender. You must be willing to surrender. When you're trying to grow your business, you must be willing to surrender. To surrender to what? To surrender to the fact that you might have to stop dealing with certain individuals. You might have to stop dealing with certain businesses. You might have to stop doing a lot of things different. But you have to surrender to the fact that things may not have worked before, but they may not work this time. But the problem they're not working for you in regards to business or ministry is because you haven't surrendered to the fact that maybe the people you are connected to are not really helping you, and they could be a weight. You have to surrender. Be willing to surrender. Watch this. The greatness of a man's power is in the measure of his surrender. That came from General William Booth, who is the foundation of the Salvation Army. He says, the greatness of a man's power is in the measure of his surrender. Whenever you are trying to grow your business or grow your ministry, you must be willing to surrender. A lot of times people try to hold on to people and never let them go, but you must be willing to surrender. When you're trying to grow your business, there are things you might have to get rid of. There are ways you might have to change. But in order for you to do that, you must be willing to surrender. If you're not willing to surrender, then it's going to be very hard for you to grow anything in your life. You must be willing to surrender. The greatness of a man's power is in the measure of his surrender. What William Booth is saying is, you want to know how great a man or a woman can be or how far they can go, you simply need to tell me, what are they willing to surrender? Because most people, when you're trying to grow something, they aren't willing to surrender something. One of the hindrances of a person trying to grow a business or grow a ministry is because they do not want to surrender some of the old things that they used to do. And a lot of times I talk to individuals and they make this statement, we always did it that way. And I said, and that's exactly why you're still in the same place, because you always did it that way. You must be willing to surrender when you are trying to grow your business, when you're trying to grow your ministry, or when you're trying to advance your marriage. You must be willing to surrender. Surrender what? Surrender things that have not worked this far. You started out when you were 25 and you're 35 now and you're still trying the same method. You must be willing to surrender. The greatness of a man's power is in the measure of his surrender. William Booth, the General William Booth, of the founder of the Salvation Army, he says, you want to know how great or great a man or woman will become? Simply tell me what they are willing to surrender. What's the hardest area for you to surrender? When you're trying to grow your business or you're trying to grow anything, you have to find out what's the hardest area for you to surrender. When you find out what's the hardest area for you to surrender or give up or abandon or relinquish or, watch this, just let go, you can address it. What's the hardest area for you to surrender in your business or trying to grow your business or your ministry? What's the hardest area? Is it letting people go? Is it telling people no? What's the hardest area for you to surrender? When you're trying to grow your business, you must be willing to surrender. But you have to discover, or you have to admit, what's the hardest area for you to surrender. In this book called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud, he made this statement. Change must be structured for many reasons, but one is the way the brain works. Watch this. He says old patterns get reinforced unless a new discipline is introduced to override the old pattern. When you are trying to grow your business, you have to be able to surrender. Old patterns get reinforced unless a new discipline is introduced to override the old pattern. The man is simply saying you must be willing to surrender. But if you have an old pattern that you keep functioning off of, you have to introduce your brain to a new discipline to be able to override the old pattern. You must be willing to surrender. Key number 3, you must be willing to surrender. It says, without surrendering, changing, we become, watch this, predictable. When we aren't willing to surrender one way to another, we become predictable. Even our own children will predict what we will do. When we aren't willing to surrender, we become predictable. If you ever order something, watch this, on the computer. If you on a computer and you order something and you punch in your credit card information and you order whatever and you close it out after you purchase your order, if you come back to that same computer and start punching in your information, the number or the name and stuff will start to appear. That's called autofill. And what the computer is trying to do, or what the computer is doing, is trying to predict that you're going to use the same information that you used before. But that's called autofill. It's a feature on a computer that automatically fills certain boxes with the data based on the information the user has entered before. Autofill is using the information you used before. If you're trying to grow your business, you must be willing to surrender old ways of doing things into new ways of doing things. Because if you don't, you're going to start being predictable. I remember we were somewhere out of town and I was with a few people who had went to the same church or go to the same church as me, Glory Tabernacle in Bridgeton. And they made a statement by looking at their clock. They looked at their watch and they looked what time it was, and it was on the weekend, and they said, about this time right now, they're doing this at our particular church. And I said, whoa, how can you predict what they're doing at this particular time? He said they always do it this time. They have become predictable. Whenever you become predictable when you're trying to grow your business or trying to grow your ministry, you must be willing to surrender to what? To change. If you don't surrender to change, you will be going in circle after circle after circle, and it will appear that you're actually going somewhere, but you're really not going anywhere. It's a circle. When you're trying to grow your business or ministry, you must be willing to surrender to change, or you'll be predictable, or you'll become predictable. And all the time that happens, no matter where I go, people become very, very predictable. You must be willing to surrender. One of the key obstacles, watch this, I'm talking about 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business. And one of the key obstacles is to surrender it is pride. The good news is there's a known cure called humility. One of the key obstacles to surrendering is pride. But the good news is there's a known cure called humility. When you're trying to grow your business, your marriage, or relationships, or whatever it is, you must be willing to surrender one old way that has not been working to a new way. When you surrender, in order for you to surrender, you will have to become unpredictable. You can't let things to be predictable. When you're trying to grow your business, one of the main things that stop us from changing is pride. We are accustomed to doing things this way. We have been going down this path for so long, we don't want to change. If you want to grow, change has to happen, but you must be willing to surrender. Sometimes before you change, you need to put something in that place. Sometimes you need to replace something and put something in that place. When you're trying to grow your business, you must be willing to surrender. The greatness of a man's power or woman's power is in the measure of their surrender, not their money. In order to grow your business, you must be willing to surrender. What are you willing to surrender in order to grow to the next level? If you're trying to grow your ministry, what are you willing to surrender in order to grow your ministry? Remember, it's more blessed to give than receive. Most people keep going in with the mindset, what I can get from them. But you have to have a different mindset. What can I add to them? What can I give to them? In order for you to grow, you must be willing to surrender. I'm just going over the 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business. You can use these universally. And the first key was you must have an introduction. Key number 2 is you must realize that your purpose is greater than your struggle. And key number 3 is you must be willing to surrender. You must be willing to surrender. And the reason why you must be willing to surrender in regards to trying to grow something is because if you keep holding on to dead weight, it's simply going to pull you down. When you're trying to grow your business, I'm talking about growing, you must be willing to surrender. Most people hold on to stuff that they never use, and they still hold on to it for years after years and never wore it, and years after years after years. And why are you holding on to something you never wore? And matter of fact, if you went to go try to put it on today, you can't even fit it. I'm just saying, in order for you to grow in business, marriage, or relationships or ministry, you must be willing to surrender. What are you willing to surrender? Don't become predictable. When you become predictable, even everything around you start predicting what you will do. When you are trying to grow something, a business, a marriage, a relationship, whatever it is you're trying to grow, you must be willing to surrender. There are some things that just cannot go with you. There are some people who cannot go with you. Everybody is not going to go to the top with you, even if they started out with you at the bottom. Some people you will have to change. You will have to change. You will have to expose yourself. One of the things that I have learned is one of the most powerful things I have learned is when they have all these conferences about things that I want to do, I go to the conferences. Even if I'm not the particular speaker, if it's somebody else performing in that particular field that I want to be in, I go to conferences. Many as conferences as you want in your particular field, go to them as many times as possible. You must be willing to surrender. You must be willing to surrender. Today, we're just talking about you must be willing to surrender, which is key number 3 of the 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business. For the 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business, remember the foundation that you must stand on is Genesis 1:28. It says, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and take dominion. To be fruitful means to produce something. To multiply means to increase it in number. To fill the earth means to put as much as possible into. To subdue means to conquer. And to take dominion means the right or power to control or govern. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and take dominion. That is the foundation for the Minor Adjustments business. For 8 things you need to know in order to grow your business. Key number 1 is you must have an introduction. Key number 2 is you must realize that your purpose is greater than your struggle. And key number 3 is you must be willing to surrender. God bless y'all, and we'll see y'all next week for key number 4.